The sun burned over the Mojave like a god with no mercy, spilling fire upon a world of dust and silence. The land stretched endlessly, where only the brave or the broken dared to wander. And somewhere between those two was Elias Cain, a drifter, a gunslinger with nothing left to lose. His horse limped, his canteen ran dry, and death was beginning to whisper in his ear. For 3 days, Elias had seen nothing but vultures, circling above in the haunting mirage of salvation that always vanished when he blinked. Then, just as his knees began to buckle, he saw smoke, thin and curling like a promise, rising from a canyon below. With what little strength he had left, he followed it. He didn't expect kindness in that wild country. But what he found stopped his heart. A small Apache girl, no older than 6, sitting beside a dying fire, her face streaked with tears and dirt, her tiny hands clutched an empty water skin. She looked up at him, eyes wide, frightened, yet unyielding. Elias dismounted slowly. "Easy, little one," he murmured, voice cracked from thirst. "Where's your family?" The girl didn't speak. She just looked at him. Then at the barren horizon where the smoke of a raid still smoldered far off. Elias understood. He'd seen what frontier men did to villages they didn't understand. He gave her the last crumbs of his dried biscuit, then opened his canteen and tilted it toward her lips. She drank like a starving fawn, and when she finished, she whispered one word. Trembling, "Mama." By the time the sun dropped behind the red cliffs, Elias had built a small fire and wrapped the girl in his tattered blanket. He didn't plan on staying. He was a man who moved like the wind, never belonging anywhere, but something about the child's silent eyes rooted him to that place. As night fell, drums echoed faintly in the distance, deep and rhythmic. Before dawn, they found him. A war party of Apache warriors emerged from the desert like ghosts, their painted faces catching the moonlight. At their center rode Nayeli, a tall, fierce woman with braided hair, a necklace of feathers and eyes sharp as obsidian. Her gaze fell on Elias first, then on the sleeping girl in his arms. The warriors surrounded him, bows drawn, tension thick as smoke. "She is yours?" Nayeli demanded. "No," Elias said softly. "She was alone. I just gave her food, water." The woman dismounted, her steps slow and heavy with power. She knelt beside the girl, whispering her name, Ayana, with such tenderness that even the night seemed to hold its breath. The child stirred, then opened her eyes. "Mama," she said, reaching out. Nayeli lifted her daughter, holding her tight, eyes shining with gratitude and grief. Then she looked at Elias again, studying his face, his calloused hands, his worn-out soul. "You fed my daughter," she said in a low voice that trembled like thunder. "Now you belong to me." Elias blinked. "Belong?" The warriors murmured, but Nayeli silenced them with a raised hand. "Among my people," she said, "a life saved binds 2 spirits. You gave what was yours to my child. Now your life is ours." He wanted to protest, but something in her voice, something ancient, sacred, stopped him. The desert wind howled as if sealing a pact. From that night onward, Elias Cain was no longer a wanderer. He became a man caught between 2 worlds, the white outlaw hunted by bounty men, and the Apache protector bound by a promise he never asked for. But deep inside, he knew this wasn't the end of his journey. It was the beginning of redemption. Weeks turned into months beneath the wide, merciless sky. The Apache village lived in rhythm with the land, hunting, praying, dancing beneath the stars. Elias learned their ways slowly, painfully. He learned to track deer by broken twigs, to read the clouds for rain, to speak the language of fire and silence. But the hardest lesson of all came from Nayeli. She was more than a warrior. She was a mother, a leader, a spirit unbroken by grief. Her husband had been killed by settlers, her home burned. Now she ruled through strength and wisdom, her people's hope resting on her shoulders. And yet, whenever she looked at Elias, something softened in her gaze. Maybe she saw the same emptiness that haunted her own soul. One evening, the horizon bled red with sunset as she approached him by the river. "You fight well," she said, watching him sharpen his knife. "But you fight like a man who has nothing left." Elias paused. "That's because I don't." She stepped closer. "You have my daughter's laughter now. You have my people's fire. You have me." The words hit him harder than any bullet. For the first time in years, he felt seen, not as a killer, not as a ghost, but as a man still capable of belonging somewhere. But belonging came with a price. A week later, riders came from the north, mercenaries hired by ranchers, men who wanted Apache land for cattle. They brought rifles, torches, and hatred. The sky turned black with smoke as the first shots rang out. Elias didn't hesitate. He fought alongside Nayeli's warriors, his revolver blazing like judgment. The battle roared across the canyon, blood and fire merging with thunder. When the dust settled, the ground was littered with bodies. Nayeli lay wounded, an arrow buried in her side. Elias dropped to his knees beside her, eyes wild with fear. "Stay with me," he whispered. She smiled weakly. "You fed my daughter," she said, echoing her first words. "Now you have fed my soul. You belong here, Elias Cain. Protect her. Protect them." He carried her to the sacred stones where the tribe prayed to their ancestors. By dawn, she was gone, her spirit free beneath the rising sun. Ayana clung to Elias's arm, tears streaking her cheeks. He wrapped his hand around hers and looked toward the mountains, where the first light broke the night. From that day, the outlaw became the guardian. The Apache called him Taji, meaning the man who returns. He rebuilt what was lost, teaching the children to ride, to defend, to dream. In every fire's glow, he saw Nayeli's eyes. In every dawn, he heard her voice whispering across the wind, "You belong." Years later, legends spread across the frontier of an Apache warrior with pale skin and a heart bound by honor. They said he rode with a child once saved by mercy and raised by love. And when strangers asked who he was, the girl would smile and say, "He's the man who kept a promise."